Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle Housing Market Watch for February 6, 2024. This week, we're mixing it up. We're in the podcast studio, so we're going to sound a little different, look a little different here today. And as we look at the numbers from the past week in the King and Snohomish County real estate market, we have the month-end numbers. So we've got January 2024 stats, and I want to share those as we start off because in both cases, in King County and in Snohomish County, we saw home prices rising year over year. So King County's median sales price last month was $861,927, and that's up 7.8% year over year. And if we look at Snohomish County, median sales price $717,250, and that's up 1.5% year over year. Again, in both cases, we saw home prices up year over year. And we also saw the supply numbers, the amount of homes available, continuing to shrink. And that's something we monitor in these updates every single week. We're looking at the houses coming on the market. We're looking at the list price reductions, contingent sales, pending sales. We're looking at the sold listings. We're really looking at the inventory, how quickly things are moving, and buyer activity. And then we get to see those numbers on a monthly basis. So we've got the King County updates and the Snohomish County updates, as well as the Seattle housing market updates, where we dive into each market on a monthly basis. But this is just our weekly snapshot with a little bonus update. Now, before we talk about some of the inventory numbers here, let's talk about the mortgage rates. Mortgage News Daily has the 30-year fixed rates at 6.96%, down 0.08 from yesterday. Rates had jumped just over 7% yesterday on their survey. If we look back at last week, we saw rates at 6.87, so slightly up week over week, but down from yesterday. And if we start to look at this inventory of listings, we're seeing things picking up a little bit. We're seeing that the new listings, 344, is slightly up from the 338 last week, although really that's not much of a big change here, especially as we're hoping for more supply to come onto the market. We saw 99 price reductions last week. We saw 104 this week, so a little slight uptick there in price reductions. We saw 13 contingent sales last week, and we saw 12 this week, so about the same, one less than we saw the previous week. Expired listings, 35 this week versus 22 last week. We kind of had the end of the month straddling the past couple updates. Pending sales. So this is encouraging. We're seeing more pending sales. We saw 683 pending sales, and we saw 605 the previous week. So again, an uptick in buyer activity, but not a big uptick in listings. So we were talking about that before, that the listing inventory is not really keeping up with the buyer activity. And that's not really a great sign for the housing market in the spring, at least if you're a buyer. Now, if you're a seller, that's a good sign because that means there's going to be less competition for your listing. If we look at sold listings, 338 over the past week. We had 294 in the previous week. Again, some of those sales trickling in at the end of the month, straddling the month, these last couple updates. So some of these are month-end sales or just missed the month end. And as I'm looking at this, I'm encouraged because I'm seeing more buyer activity. And that's something that we talked about in the 2024 predictions. What I'm not encouraged by is seeing the lack of new inventory coming on the market. Now, it's the beginning of February, so there's still a lot of time for more inventory to come on the market and for things to keep picking up here in 2024. But so far, we're seeing a rather pedestrian start to the year here in 2024. Now, as we look towards the next few weeks, I do expect that towards the end of February and March is when we're going to start to see that spring push. So we're not there yet, But I do think in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to see a lot more listings coming on the market. I know I've got quite a few that are probably in that same timing. And I would expect that that's a similar thing for other agents. Usually March, April, May is when you start to see the spring homes coming on the market. If you have questions about what's going on in the housing market here in King and Snohomish County in the Seattle area, or you have questions about your specific situation, I'd love to hear from you and be a resource.